It was a cold morning in late November when Grace walked into the small diner at the corner of Maple Street, holding her little girl's tiny hand. Her fingers were trembling from the cold, but her trembling wasn't only from the weather. It was from hunger, shame, and exhaustion. Her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, clutched her hand tightly, her big blue eyes scanning the bright, warm room, filled with the comforting smell of pancakes, eggs, and coffee. Grace had walked miles that morning after the old car she lived in refused to start. It wasn't much of a home, but it was all they had left after she lost her job, and then her apartment. She didn't come into the diner to eat. She came to find warmth, just for a few minutes, to sit, breathe, and pretend for one fleeting moment that life was normal again. She had a few coins in her pocket, not enough to buy even a cup of coffee, but she hoped no one would notice her long enough to ask her to leave. Grace sat Lily at the farthest corner booth, close to the door. Lily's cheeks were red from the wind, and her little pink sweater was worn thin, but her face glowed with the innocent wonder only a child could still have after hardship. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, please take a second to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your small gesture might inspire someone else to make a big difference today. As they sat there, Grace tried to distract Lily with soft words about imaginary pancakes and warm syrup, telling her maybe one day they would have breakfast here together. But Lily's gaze drifted, landing on a man sitting just a few tables away. He looked out of place in that small-town diner. A clean-cut man in his mid-30s, wearing a dark coat over a pressed shirt. His name was Daniel Hart, and though his life looked polished from the outside, inside he was quietly broken. A year ago, his wife had died in a car accident, leaving him alone and hollow. He hadn't slept properly since that night, and most mornings he came to this diner, not for food, but because the silence in his house was too loud. Daniel noticed them only when Lily's soft blue eyes met his. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't asking for anything. She was just staring at his plate. The steaming pancakes, the scrambled eggs, the bacon glistening under the morning light. It was a look no child should ever wear, a look of hunger, too familiar for her age. Grace noticed and quickly pulled her daughter's hand. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling as she stood. She didn't want anyone's pity, especially not from a stranger. They'd been looked down on enough already by landlords, by people who thought homelessness was a choice, and by those who believed kindness had an expiration date. She turned to leave quietly, keeping her head low, praying to slip out unnoticed. But Daniel saw her. He saw the worn-out shoes on her feet, the trembling in her hand, and the little girl's eyes still fixed on his plate. Something inside him, something long buried under grief, stirred. He couldn't look away. Without thinking, he called the waitress over and asked for 2 extra plates. Grace was almost at the door when the waitress's voice stopped her. "Ma'am," the waitress said, "the gentleman over there said breakfast is on him if you'd like to sit." Grace froze. Her face burned with humiliation. She wanted to say no, but then she felt Lily's small hand tighten around hers. Felt the way her daughter's body shivered slowly. She turned around. Daniel gave a faint, warm smile. Not the kind of smile that demanded anything in return, but one that said, "It's okay." They sat down. Lily's eyes widened as the waitress placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. The smell alone made her giggle softly, and that sound was like music Daniel hadn't heard in a long, long time. Grace whispered a quiet thank you, her voice cracking halfway. The first bite Lily took made Grace's eyes well up. She turned her face away, pretending to look out the window, but Daniel noticed the tear that fell onto her sleeve. For a while, none of them spoke. The diner's hum filled the silence, the clinking of plates, the faint chatter of morning regulars, and the sound of coffee being poured. As Lily ate, Daniel watched her with a soft ache in his heart. She reminded him of his late wife, Emma, the way she'd always fed stray cats outside their door, the way she believed everyone deserved kindness, no matter what. He used to tell her she was too soft for this world. Now he realized maybe the world needed more people like her. When breakfast was over, Grace tried to insist on paying, fumbling with a few coins in her pocket. Daniel gently shook his head. "It's already taken care of," he said. His tone was calm but firm, not pitying. Grace looked down, ashamed but grateful. As she gathered Lily's coat, Daniel noticed the old car parked outside. He could tell from one glance that it hadn't run in a long time. Without hesitation, he followed them out, offering to help. Grace refused at first, but when the car wouldn't start after several tries, she gave in. Daniel rolled up his sleeves and worked silently, his hands steady, his face calm. When the engine finally coughed to life, Lily clapped her tiny hands, squealing with joy. Grace's smile, fragile and rare, appeared for the first time. She thanked him quietly. Daniel handed her a small folded note before stepping back. "In case you ever need anything," he said. That note had his number and an address. Grace hesitated before taking it, unsure if she'd ever use it. But that night, as rain poured over the car they slept in, she opened it again, her fingers trembling. She wasn't sure what made her do it, desperation, faith, or the memory of that morning. But she called. Daniel answered instantly. Within an hour, he was there, standing outside the car with a large umbrella and 2 paper bags of food. He didn't ask questions. He didn't lecture. He simply opened the passenger door and said softly, "You both shouldn't be out here tonight." That night, he took them to a small guest house he owned behind his late parents' farmhouse. It was clean, warm, and filled with the faint scent of fresh bread. Grace cried silently after Lily fell asleep in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Daniel stood outside the door, listening to the soft rhythm of a child's peaceful breathing, a sound he hadn't heard since Emma passed. Something inside him healed that night. Days turned into weeks. Grace found small ways to repay his kindness, helping around the farmhouse, washing dishes, cleaning the porch. Daniel never asked her to. But every morning he found fresh coffee waiting for him, and a drawing from Lily taped to the refrigerator. Stick figures of Mr. Daniel holding her hand. Over time, their pain became the bridge between them. Daniel learned how Grace lost her job after the company shut down, how she had no family left, and how she tried to keep her daughter's hope alive when she had none left herself. Grace learned that Daniel's quietness came from grief, not arrogance, and that behind his polite smile was a heart still learning how to beat again. Winter melted into spring, and the world around them softened. Lily began calling Daniel Uncle Dan. Sometimes, when she'd fall asleep on the porch, Grace would catch Daniel looking at her with the same gentle warmth he once had for his late wife. Neither of them spoke about it, but both felt it. Months later, Grace found a new job at a nearby elementary school cafeteria, and Daniel helped her get her car fixed for good. She started to believe again, not just in life, but in the idea that good people still existed. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Daniel came home to find Grace and Lily baking cookies in the kitchen. Lily looked up with a wide smile and said, "Mr. Daniel, Mommy says we're staying here forever." Grace froze for a second, embarrassed, but Daniel only smiled. He looked at them both, the woman who had taught him to live again, and the child who had unknowingly healed his heart, and said softly, "I'd like that." That night, they ate dinner together at the same